The United States operates the most productive oil pumping machine in human history. Every single day, American drillers pull more raw crude from the earth, producing far more than Saudi Arabia and Russia combined. Yet despite this massive domestic surplus, the American economy remains deeply anxious about what happens thousands of miles away in the Strait of Hormuz. If you track the physical barrels entering the U.S. market, the volume transiting this specific Middle Eastern waterway accounts for a tiny 2.5% of total American crude supplies. The math looks like an airtight case for self-reliance. But energy independence is an illusion, hiding a multi-tiered structural vulnerability to the rest of the world. The first vulnerability stems from a basic legal reality. Politicians frequently talk about our oil, but the crude pulled from American soil does not belong to the American government. Almost every barrel is owned by private corporations. Companies like Exxon and Chevron operate under strict fiduciary duties to maximize returns for their shareholders, meaning they route oil to whoever pays the highest price. If shipments out of the Persian Gulf freeze tomorrow, countries across Asia and Europe instantly lose their primary fuel source. To keep their economies running, those foreign buyers will immediately start outbidding local refineries in Texas and Ohio. Faced with that price gap, American producers will happily load their supply onto ships bound for Tokyo or Rotterdam. Any corporate executive who chose to sell locally for a discount would be quickly replaced. A physical supply collapse in Asia mechanically forces the price of fuel at your local gas station to skyrocket, regardless of how much oil sits under domestic soil. The second vulnerability is chemistry. Crude oil is graded on weight, how thick the fluid is, and sweetness, how much sulfur it contains. America's shale boom yields exclusively light, sweet crude. It flows easily and requires very little processing, but America's massive Gulf Coast refining network was built decades ago, long before this surge in light domestic oil. Energy companies spent tens of billions of dollars engineering these legacy facilities to run on thick, highly sulfurous crude imported from places like Mexico, Canada, and Saudi Arabia. To operate at peak efficiency today, these complexes require a very specific blend. They have to mix the local light crude with heavy sour imports. If the heavy barrels normally shipped through the Strait of Hormuz disappear, the United States is left sitting on oceans of light oil that its own infrastructure is largely unable to process by itself. Beyond the physical infrastructure lies an invisible macroeconomic bedrock tying America's domestic stability to the Middle East. In 1974, American diplomats struck an arrangement with the Saudi royal family. The Saudis agreed to sell their oil exports exclusively in U.S. dollars. This cycle maps out the vital second half of that deal. Because the Saudis generated far more currency than they could spend domestically, they systematically recycled those dollars back into the American financial system by purchasing U.S. Treasury bonds. This is the petrodollar loop. Because energy is a universal necessity, every other major economy is forced to hoard vast reserves of U.S. dollars. This perpetual global demand gives the American government an endless pool of international lenders to fund its own borrowing. Right now, Iran is testing a direct challenge to that system. They are allowing oil tankers to pass through the strait, provided the buyers settle their trades in Chinese currency, bypassing the dollar entirely. If the global oil trade stops requiring the dollar, foreign central banks lose their primary reason to hold U.S. Treasury debt. Without those massive international buyers, the government must offer higher yields to attract new lenders. Since those bond yields serve as the benchmark for almost all commercial lending, that increase translates directly into higher interest rates for home mortgages, small business loans, and personal credit. American military tension in the Strait of Hormuz protects the financial architecture that has underwritten the Western world for half a century.